Hey friends, in this video we're going to be talking about the 5 apps that I use every single day as a final year medical student. Make sure you like and subscribe. The first app is probably the most important app for you to have on your phone as a medical student and probably as a doctor as well, and that is the BNF app. The BNF, or the British National Formulary, contains all of the information for prescribing, administering, and just anything you need to know basically about any drug that is licensed by the NHS. It's updated super regularly by NICE, and by having the app on your phone, you've got at your fingertips all of the information you might need about basically any drug you can prescribe. One of the major problems that I've found in the various different hospitals I've worked in as a medical student is that across the board there is such a variety in how prescribing has to be done. In some hospitals it's now all electronic and everything is done in an app on the computer, and that way you only have to select from drop-down menus particular drugs and dosages and routes. In other hospitals, like where I am now, I'm at the Conquest in Hastings, it's all paper, and so it relies on the doctor and then the pharmacist to check the notes to prescribe the right thing, the right amount, the right way, and at the right times. If you think about all of the drugs that you might be prescribing in a day, all of the drugs that as a medical student I might be reading in the patient's notes, that is just a ridiculous amount, and it would be kind of impossible to know all of those without looking them up. Pharmacology is also probably my weakest subject out of any of the things you need to know as a medical student, and so I'm very, very fortunate that press of a few buttons I'm able to access everything I could possibly need to know. BNF app is definitely a must, it's free as well. Following on from that, this is probably the next most used app on placements, and that is MicroGuide. The way the NHS works, it's split up into various deaneries and trusts, and within those trusts are specific hospitals. And every trust across all 4 of the countries in the UK have their own guidelines. That's their own guidelines for prescribing, their own guidelines for escalating a patient, and their own guidelines particularly for antibiotics. MicroGuide was initially set up so that when you're moving around various trusts as a trainee doctor, you can be safe in prescribing the antibiotic that should be prescribed to the population that the hospital serves. As you might already know, antibiotic resistance is a really big problem, and it's only going to be a bigger problem in the future. And the way we can combat that as medical students and eventually as doctors is by prescribing the right antibiotics in the right route and at the right amount. Because different trusts serve a different population of people and are in a different environment, there are different bacteria in different areas of the country which are going to be resistant to different antibiotics. And so it's important when you move to a new trust that you're using the antibiotics that you should be using against that bacteria. MicroGuide has since expanded though, and on there are PDFs of all of the information that are trust specific that a doctor and a medical student might need to know. I find it really helpful because this is currently the 4th trust I've worked in as a medical student, and there have been differences throughout. So MicroGuide, that's definitely the 2nd most used app on my phone. There are 2 main ways that you're examined as a medical student when you're at medical school. First of all is written exams, and for me at King's, all of those are multiple choice, and there are various ways that I can revise and prepare for those exams, and unfortunately that has to involve a bit of cramming. And so when I'm building up to an exam, I use a huge amount of flashcards to learn the content. I like to make my flashcards on an app called Notion. Notion is also where I make a lot of my written notes, and it's great to have that app on my phone so that I can just access anything I might need to know or jot something down so that I can remember to go and look it up later. Quite often when you're on placement in medical school, you'll come across a condition that maybe you thought you knew about but you realise you need to go and read a lot more about, or you come across a condition that you've never heard of, and that's exciting and you can go home and learn about it. If you have an app that you can quickly jot that down, and it could just be in the Notes app on your iPhone or whatever the equivalent is on Android, but I like to use Notion so that I can access it very quickly on my iPad and my laptop. Carrying on from that, I also have GoodNotes on my phone and my iPad. In 1st, 2nd and 3rd year, where we had a huge amount of lectures, I used GoodNotes pretty much exclusively to take notes during lectures, and it's where all of my handwritten notes have ended up. So it's really useful for me to be able to go on there, look something up, have a quick read of some lecture slides about a particular condition before I go in and clerk a patient with that condition. The other way that you're examined as a medical student is with OSCEs, and that's Objective Structured Clinical Examinations. These are the practical exams you have as a medical student. Generally, these are kind of mini stations that you have to work around, and you've got between 5 and 10 minutes with a patient to do a set task. And now as a final year medical student, those set tasks that you're expecting to be able to do in 5 or 10 minutes covers pretty much anything. When you're on placement in hospital, you're also expected by doctors to be able to go and do things. And if a doctor says to you, go and clerk that patient, I'd really like you to focus on an upper limb neurological exam, it's great to have an app on your phone where you can really quickly have a read over what that entails, so that when you come back and feedback to the doctor what you found and they check over what you've done, or they're going to observe what you're doing, you don't look like an absolute idiot. To do that, I use the Geeky Medics app. Geeky Medics is a website which pretty much every medical student in the country, and probably outside of the country as well, uses to revise for their OSCEs. They've got some great videos on YouTube, and their website is set up with OSCE guides, how to, and like a really well-structured framework for doing every single one of those practical skills. Having the app on your phone means that while you're walking from the doctor's office to the patient, you can really quickly double check, brush up, so you know what it is you need to be doing. The app is also great for your OSCE revision, and you can use it when you're revising with friends or even just by yourself. So those are the 5 apps I use as a final year medical student, and in order, first of all is probably the BNF, next it's MicroGuide, then Notion and GoodNotes, both of which I use for my notes, and finally Geeky Medics. Let me know in the comments below if you use any of those apps, or if there's an app that I really need to check out. Thank you so much for watching this video, and stay tuned for the next one.